Today is, of course, Chaf Menachem Av, the 20th day of the month of Av, which is the yahrzeit, the Hilula, the day of passing of Hagoin Hamakubo, Rav Levi Yitzchak, the father of our Rebbe. Now, Rav Levi Yitzchak was a Rav in Yekaterinoslav. He was a great scholar in both the revealed dimensions of Torah as well as the hidden esoteric dimensions of Torah, the teachings of Kabbalah. And for us as Chassidim, that is what we associate Reb Leivik with. We associate him with his teachings and study of Kabbalah, because those are the teachings which have been transcribed and recorded. Just to share a quick story, an anecdote before we get started. Reb Levi Yitzchak, the Rebbe's father, received smicha, or went to be tested for smicha, from one of the greatest Gaonim of the time, Reb Chaim Brisker. So Reb Chaim Brisker was not of the Hasidic gathering, he was not of the Hasidic association, and therefore he was trying to get out of having to give the Rebbe's father smicha. And the seder was that when you came to Reb Chaim for smicha, you would stay in his house for a certain duration of time. And whenever there were practical shilas that came to Reb Chaim as the Rav, so he would turn to the potential musmach and ask him, what is your opinion? And they would have to answer, and he would see from their responses. Anyway, he asked Reb Leivik all sorts of questions, and he could not fault him. And indeed, the famous story which the Rebbe tells many times, that there was a shaila that came on the day of Sukkot, that on the Yom Tov of Sukkot, on the Shabbos of Sukkot, there was a chutzner, a communal courtyard where people lived, but they had forgotten to make an eruv. And they had planned to all eat in the same sukkah. They had one sukkah for the whole courtyard, and they did not make an eruv, and therefore that would mean they cannot carry their food from their houses into the sukkah and eat in the courtyard as halacha requires. So what should they do? It was Shabbos already. On Shabbos one cannot make the eruv. So what do you do? So Rav Chaim turned to the Rebbe's father, and the Rebbe's father answered that the sukkah itself is ma'arev. The sukkah itself, since it is shared by everyone in the courtyard, they all have an ownership jointly in that sukkah, and they are all eating in the sukkah. The sukkah unites everybody and creates one reshus, one domain, and therefore they are allowed to carry. In which Rav Chaim very much enjoyed and liked this answer and said indeed that it is correct. But then he said as follows. He said, Reb Leivik, you have such a geoinish kop, you have such an unbelievable head, you are so brilliant in your knowledge of Torah, and in what are you spending your headspace? Where are you putting your head? You're wasting it kaviyachol on matters of Kabbalah, on matters of Chassidus, and he didn't obviously appreciate as a not being a Chassid, did not appreciate the value and the importance of the study of Pnimius HaTorah, both in the writings of Chassidus and the writings of Kabbalah. Now, we don't have much of the teachings of Reb Leivik. We have a series of volumes printed under the title Likutei Levi Yitzchak, or Toras Levi Yitzchak, which has the Rebbe's father's writings on the Zohar, on the 5 books of the Chumash as they are explained in the Zohar, as well as writings on Igeres HaTshuva of the Alter Rebbe in Tanya. And in addition, we have some writings of the Rebbe's father on Maimorei Chazal, and on some certain teachings from our sages found in the Mishnah and in the Gemara. And of course, this was taken out of Russia at great risk by Rebbe Tzimchana, Reb Leivik's wife, the Rebbe's mother, and she was able to smuggle out the ksavim, the writings that we have, which of course we know that while Reb Leivik was away in Golus, when he was exiled, and he unfortunately passed away due to his harsh treatment, he passed away in exile as well. So Reb Leivik did not have Svarim with him. He had very few Svarim. He had a Zohar, he had a Chumash, he had a Tanya. And Rebbe Tzimchana would make ink. She would get berries, collect berries, and make ink so that he would be able to write on the margins of these Svarim. He didn't have paper. He wrote on the margins of the Svarim. And from these teachings were distilled the writings which are printed under Likutei Levi Yitzchak. And many of these teachings the Rebbe would elaborate on and explain at the Fabrengens. So in the course of the day, we're going to share a few of these teachings. They are obviously very Kabbalistic in nature, and they just give us a glimpse into the mind of the Gaoinus of Reb Levi Yitzchak in Kabbalah. And so I'd like to do is share a few teachings. We're going to start off this morning in our first shir. We're going to learn an explanation from Reb Leivik on the Zohar from last week's Parsha, from Parshas Eikev. Later in the day, we're going to look at the explanations of Rebbe Leivik on a number of Maimorei Chazal, teachings in the Mishnah, both in Masechta Kiddushin and in Masechta Tamid, and you could clock in later and join us for that. But we're going to start off in Parshas Eikev. So Parshas Eikev, amongst other things, has within it the mitzvah of benching. The pasuk says, "V'achalta v'savata uveirachta Hashem Elokecha," that you will eat, you will be full, and you will bless Hashem your God for the food that you've eaten. And of course, this is the source of the mitzvah of benching. In addition, we know that before we eat and before we perform a mitzvah, as we've been learning in the Rambam lately, we make brachas, we make a blessing before as well. These brachas are not midoraisa, they are not biblical requirements, they are midrabanan, they are only rabbinic requirements. Nonetheless, the Gemara says that we can deduce these requirements from the psukim in the Torah itself, which teaches us about the mitzvah of benching. So the formula of all brachas begins the same. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam. Now this is how the bracha begins. Now what is the purpose of a bracha? So in Nigla of Torah, in the revealed dimension of Torah, the bracha is giving thanks to Hashem for that which He has given to us. And a person is not allowed to benefit from this world without making a bracha. The Kabbalah and Chassidus explains that a bracha, the word bracha, comes from the terminology of a hamshacha, to draw down. For example, the Mishnah teaches hamavrich es hagefen, that if a person grafts a vine, that if you want to grow a vine, you take an existing vine, you draw it down into the ground, and then you sever it, and it will grow a new vine. And therefore, hamavrich means to bend down, to bring down. And so too, every bracha is a hamshacha. The bracha itself draws down godly energy into Seder Ishtalshelus, and we're going to the Zohar in Parashas Eikev explains through the nusach of the bracha what each word represents, the word Baruch, the word Ata, the word Hashem, Elokeinu, Melech HaOlam, etc., showing how the bracha brings down godly revelation from the highest of levels and brings it all the way down into our worldly reality. So that is the Zohar on Parashas Eikev. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up a slide on the screen which has the text of the Zohar, and I'm going to jump to a slideshow as well, which will help to pick things and make it a little bit easier to see. So in front of you, in front of us is the text of Rebbe Yitzchak. Now I'm just going to now get up the actual text of the Zohar, and then we'll learn the Zohar first, and then we will look in Rebbe Leivik's teachings. Okay. Okay, so on the screen now, you should have a Word document. And in that Word document, we have the text of the Zohar on Parshas Eikev. So the Zohar says as follows. V'raza de'ilein bircha'an. That's a word which is used extensively in the Zohar. The word raza, raza means a secret. So the secret of these brachas, de'ilein bircha'an, nitara mi'ela lasata. It is in order to awaken a flow of energy, of godliness, me'ela from above, lasata to bring it down, v'razada according to the following secret. And that is, we're going to go through the words of the bracha. So the bracha opens with the word Baruch. Says the Zohar, what is Baruch? Da raza de mekaira ila'a mikaila. This is the raza. Baruch represents the secret of the mekaira ilah, the supernal source, mikaila, that which is higher than everything and that which is the source of everything. And as we're going to explain, this refers to the Sphira of Chachma. Within the paradigm of the 10 Sphiras, the first Sphira Chachma is Reishis HaGilui. It is the beginning of revelation of godliness within Seder Ishtalshelus. So Baruch is connected to the Sphira of Chachma, the Mekaira Ilah Mekaila, the source of everything. And what is its purpose? What is this Baruch? La'arka, which means to pour out, La'amshacha, to draw down, Ula'anhara, to illuminate, Kol Beitzinin, all of the candles, all of the lights. The Iu Baruch Tadir, it is in a constant state of Hamshacha, it's in a constant state of flow. Dole Paskin Meimai, that its waters do not stop. That means the flow of Chachma coming down into the lower spheres, particularly the sphere of Bina, which is the partner of Chachma. They are called Train, Rain, Doloi, Misparshin, two friends which do not separate. So the flow from Chachma is constant, like a Shelusa to Ikre Alma to Asi, and from there begins the place which is called Alma Asi, the world to come, which of course the world to come, Olam Haba, is associated with the sphere of Bina, because Olam Haba is about understanding of godliness. That's when the neshamas understand and have deeper appreciations of godliness, which is Bina, that is understanding. And that receives its water, it receives its revelation from the sphere of Chachma. The Iu could say Hashamayim, and this sphere of Chachma is called the extremity, the top of the heavens, the highest of levels. This is the upper extremity. This is the highest level within Seder Ishtalshulos, the level of Chachma. And corresponding, there is also the lowest extremity of Seder Ishtalshulos of the spheres, which is the sphere of Malchus, the Alma Tatar, which is called the lower world. The Ikru Ufhachi Baruch Lekabel Tatai La'arka Lasata. So why is Chachma? Why is the spirit of Chachma called Baruch? Because as we've said, Baruch means to draw down, in order that the Tatai, the lower worlds, from the sphere of Malchus, the lowest of the 10 spheres, should receive the revelation of Chachma, La'arka Lasata, to bring it down, to pour it down into the lower worlds, Ulis'ara Mitata La'ela, and also to awaken an arousal from below to above, the Birchan Tzloisa, through the blessings of our prayers. And this Baruch, which is at the beginning of the text of every Bracha, that is the secret of the Sphira of Chachma. Chachma Se'ilah, the Amle Lahu Asar, which comes and fills up that space. So that space refers to Bina, because the function of Chachma is to bring revelation to the Sphira of Bina. And what comes down is a shvil dakik, like a thin pathway. There's only a fine line, only a ha'ara, an emanation, a ray of Chachma, which comes down into Bina, and from there it will come down to the additional spheres. Then we move on to the next word of the bracha, and that is the word Ata. What does the word Ata represent? So it says the Zohar, Ata, levasar sharei liskalia. After we have the beginning of revelation in the sphere of Chachma, and from there it comes to Bina and Da'as. So Daha Hai Baruch Sasim Ihu. That level of Baruch, the level of Chachma, is Sasim, it's hidden. It's a level of godliness which is hidden, it's beyond revelation, and it needs to come down into Seder Ishtalshulos to become revealed and accessed. We'll begin Kach, Ikre Ba'orech Sasim Baruch. That's why the hidden pathway, which is Chachma, is called Baruch, Mekore Ilah Delay Iskalia, which is the hidden, it's the source above, which is not revealed. Now, the word Ata means you. And you, when you talk to someone in second person, that means something which is revealed. You can identify the person. You could say Ata, you. You can point to it. So Ata is Sherusa Lizgalia Lebar. The word Ata is where the Hamshacha, the flow that comes down through our brachas, begins to be revealed to the outside. Or begin Kach, Ikre Ata, that is why it is called Ata. Ata being the idea, you, something which is revealed. And as we're going to see in a moment, the word Ata represents the next of our spheres, and that is the sphere of Chesed. And when we come to the emotions, just like emotions are revealed on a person's face in their expression, so to the emotions are about revelation of the godliness which is hidden within Chachma. So who is this? What is this level, which is the beginning of revelation, represented by the word Ata? Da Raza Diyamina. This is the secret of the right side. And we know the right-hand side, the right hand is Chesed. The Ikre Koyen Legabe Ahu Asar. And it is called the Koyen in relation to that place. Now we know that the division of the Jewish people into Koyenim, Leviim, and Yisraelim represent the spheres as well. The Koyen, who is an Ish Chesed, the Kohen represents, like Aaron HaKohen, who is Oyev Shalom, V'roidev Shalom, is about peace, is about love, is about kindness, and that is the sphere of Chesed. Indeed, the Pasuk in Tehillim, Kapitel Kuf Yud, says, as we're about to quote, it says, the Berazada Ata Kohen La'olam. David HaMelech says to Hashem, you are Kohen La'olam. The Ata, so we see that this word Ata represents the level of Kohen, both representing the idea of the attribute of Chesed. Man Kohen Lahu Olam, who is the Kohen of that world? Ata, the level of Ata, which is the spirit of Chesed, is the Kohen of the world of Atzilus. The da il yemine elah, and says the Zohar, this is the level of yemin above, the right hand above, which is chesed. The ha ishtekach lizgalia, which is found to be revealed. So that is the word ata, represents the sphere of chesed, the beginning now of revelation. Then we come to the next word of the pasuk, and that is havaya, the name of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. And we know that each of the names of Hashem correspond to a different sphere. So the name Kael is associated with the attribute of chesed. The name Elohim is associated with the attribute of Gevura. Yud Kei Vav Kei is representative of the sphere of Tiferes. Tiferes, which is the primary sphere of the emotional spheres of Atzilus, and Tiferes, which finds itself on the middle column, which goes all the way up to Keser, to the highest of levels of godliness. Therefore, Tiferes is represented by the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. Da Raza de Emtza Isa, says the Zohar, this is the secret of the middle column. Raza de Memnusa b'chol sitrin, which is the secret of emunah, of faith, b'chol sitrin, in all sides, in all directions. And again, the terminology is very cryptic, but essentially we're referring with the word Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei, to the sphere of Tiferes, which is the middle column. Then we come to Elokeinu, the next word of our Bracha, which we've already explained, that Elokim is the name associated with Din or Gevura. Da Sitra de Smola. So Elokim represents Sitra, meaning side, the left side. The Kalil b'Yamina Bey. So we know that Chesed is the right side, Gevura is the left side. Then we have what is called Hiskalus. Hiskalus is the integration of the spheres, one within the other, that they are able to operate in tandem together, and one is subservient to the other. So even though the Elokeinu, the Gevura that we're referring to in this bracha, is Gevura, nonetheless it is Gevura the way it is Kalil b'Yamina, the way it is absorbed or incorporated into Chesed, b'Yamina Bey, and Chesed is incorporated within the Gevura. This Kalilu da b'da, they are united and integrated one to the other, till they become one. The Adhacha is Kasharu Birchan, the Kimin de Ilain is Barchan, Kulu de Latata is Barachan. And this is basically where the main essential text of the bracha comes to its end. Of course, we then have Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam. However, at this point already, this is where the Hamshacha is become is Kasharu. They've been tied up, they've been bound up, the blessings. And once the brachas have come down into Ata, Chesed, Havaya, Tiferes, and Elokeinu Gevura, then Kulam Lasatis Barchan, then all of the lower worlds will receive that blessing as well, because these are the three primary spheres. The remaining spheres, Netzach, Hod, Yesoid, and Malchus, are only offshoots, they're subsidiaries, and then from there it can come down into the lower worlds. So the Zohar continues and discusses about the rest of the Hamshach of the Bracha, but for us to understand our text today, this is sufficient. So just to summarize, we have Baruch, which is Chachma, and the way Chachma flows into Bina and Da'as. Ata, which is the sphere of Chesed. Havaya, which is the sphere of Tiferes. And Elokeinu, which corresponds to the sphere of Gevura. So now let's go to the writings of Rebbe Leivik on this Zohar, and we'll see how he analyzes these words. Now, just as a preface, the Mittler Rebbe, in his introduction to his Biurei HaZohar, his commentary, his explanations according to Chassidus on the Zohar, he writes that the Alter Rebbe, when the Alter Rebbe would learn the Sefer Zohar, he would learn in a way of iyun, in depth, ba'amaka, in depth learning, gedola, ubiyagia rabba, and great toil, bediktuk haloshin b'chol milah, with the specific nuance of every single word and the grammatical context of every word in the Zohar, that every word in the Zohar, which of course was written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Zohar, which is the deepest revelations of godly wisdom, every single word is precise. And therefore, just like in the Torah, every word is precise, and we can be medayik in every word, so too, when the Alter Rebbe would learn the Zohar, he was medayik in every word. And indeed, as we see in the writings of Rebbe Leivik, we can be medayik in every word as well. So, before we come to this, I'm just going to jump back to our former text, the text of the Zohar. If we have a look in this page, where we have the word Baruch, which is Raza de Mekayre Elah Mekayre, the sphere of Chachma, the Zohar uses three words, which I've highlighted in red, blue, and green. And that is la'arka, to pour out revelation, and to draw down, and to illuminate. So why do we have these three words? Again, we could be medayik in the words. Why these three words used in association with Chachma? So it says Rebbe as follows. So he quotes from the Zohar, from Daf Resh Ayin Aleph, Raya Mehemna, Baruch Darazu de Mekayre Elam, Mekayre La'arka Lam Shachal Anhara B'chol Butzinin. Says Rebbe, Hagimul L'Shonos, these three terms which the Zohar uses to describe the Hamshacha from Chachma. La'arka, to pour out, U'Hamshacha, to draw down from the word Hamshacha, U'Anhara, and to illuminate, Yesh Levar, Yesh Leimer, we could explain, Ki Baruch Shu Razu de Mekayre Elah, Hainu Yesoid Abba. The word Baruch, which is the secret of the source above, the source of revelation in Seder Ishtalshus, that is Yesoid Abba. Abba, the Father, which is Chachma. Hine. Chachma hu Yud Shebeshem. So according to Kabbalah, the four letters of Hashem's name, Yud K, Vav K, aside from representing the four worlds, they also represent the spheres. Yud represents the sphere of Chachma, Hey represents the sphere of Bina, Vav represents the six emotional spheres, and then the final Hey represents the sphere of Malchus. So the name Yud K Vav K actually represents the process of bringing down godliness through the spheres and down into our world. So the Yud represents Chachma, because just like Chachma, you get a flash of an idea, you get a perception, you have that light bulb moment, which is called a Baraka Maverick, a flash. It's like a Yud which is a very contracted letter, it's a contracted dot, and therefore it includes, it's like a nucleus which includes within it all of the details that will be expanded and extrapolated later as the idea moves into the mind of Bina. Now, the letter Yud we draw as a letter Yud, but every word in every letter in the Aleph base can also be written in its full form. Sheyesh b'zeh gimel b'chinois, v'hu gimel oisius Yud. The sphere of Chachma, represented by the Yud, has three aspects to it. And they are represented by the three letters which spell the word Yud, Yud, Vav, Dalet. What is that? So that is Yud, is a Nukuda. The letter Yud is like a Nukuda, it's like an infinitesimal dot. Vav, the Vav is a kav, is a line. And Dalet is a Shetach, Dalet is a space, an area, surface area. Now these concepts are discussed in Kabbalah, and these three levels of Nukuda, Kav, and Shetach. And I'll just bring up a slide to help us illuminate a little bit better. So we have here the sphere of Chachma, that is the word Baruch, and that is represented by the letter Yud. The Yud spelled in full, Yud, Vav, Dalet. So the Yud, if you can imagine, the Yud is like a dot, and that is referred to as a Nukuda. The beginning of all revelation starts with a Nukuda. It starts with an idea. It starts with a contracted but yet all-inclusive nucleus. Then in order to bring that down into revelation, you take the dot, and like the letter Vav, which has a Yud on the top and then is then extended downwards, the Nukuda is expanded in the form of a Kav, and that's the idea of a Hamshacha downwards. Then if we take the Kav and we expand that laterally, that is like the Dalet, which is an expansive letter in comparison to the Vav and in comparison to the Yud. That is the level of a Shetach, of a surface area. So when we talk about the function of Chachma, which Chachma includes within it Yud, Vav, and Dalet, which includes within it Chachma, Bina, and Da'as, these are the three stages or phases in the process of developing ideas. The Yud being the Nukuda, that's the flash of an idea that comes to our head. Vav is the Hamshacha, where we bring it down. We'll see in a moment that is actually Da'as. And the Shetach, the area, that is Bina. Bina is about expansion. It's about developing ideas both in breadth and in depth through analysis. So the Yud is the Nukuda of the Chachma, the flash of an idea. The Shetach, the Dalet, that is Bina, which is the expansion and development of the idea in breadth and depth. And then we have the Kav, which is the sphere of Da'as, because what Da'as does is it brings down the idea from being conceptual and abstract, and it draws it downwards into our emotional experience. It draws it down in a personal, meaningful, and relatable manner. So we'll go back to the writings of Rebbe Leivik with this diagram in mind. So we have Yud is the Nukuda, Vav, Kav, Dalet, Shetach. V'roim zim gamken al Chabad. these three letters of the Yud of Chachma also allude to the three spheres of intellect: Chachma, which is the dot; Bina, which is the Dalad, which is the expansiveness; and then the Dalad, which is the Vav. Ki Chachma Koilo Bina V'Das Gamkein, because incorporated within Chachma, which is the beginning of the intellectual process, is included in a hidden way also the Bina and the Das, the development and the integration that will come later. The Yud is the Chachma, Vav is Das, and Dalad is Bina. So now, says the Rebbe's father, now we can understand why the Zohar uses three different words to describe the revelation and the function of the Sphira of Chachma. Zehu la'arka, to pour out, that is Yud, because Yud is the beginning of the revelation. When you pour out from a pitcher, you pour into a cup, the beginning of the revelation as it comes from the source, that is the Yud. Ulam shacha, to draw down, that is the Vav, which draws the Yud downwards, that is the Vav of the Yud. And Vav, and then we have Ulan Hara, to illuminate, that is Midalad, that is the Dalad of the Yud of Chachma. And why is that illumination? Because Chachma is actually hidden. When you have an idea, but you haven't yet crystallized it, you haven't yet developed it and understood it in breadth and depth and got your mind around it, given it parameters, then it's a hidden concept. But when we have the expansion into a surface area, when you have the expansion through the breadth and depth and the understanding of Bina, then it is something which is illuminated. It's something which shines. And that is these three terms the Zohar uses. The revelation of light, the illumination of light, is when it is expanded. And that is the idea of a shetach, the surface area. So with this, we can now understand why we use the three words in the Zohar, la'arku, la'amshachal, la'anhara, when we are talking about the Sphira of Chachma, because Chachma, which is a Yud, incorporates within it the Yud, Vav, and the Dalad, which are the three levels of Chachma, Bina, and Das, or Nakuda, Kav, and Shetach. So that's part one. And then the Rebbe's father moves on to analyze the continuation of the Zohar. And again, if we go back to we'll go back to our Zohar, to the text of the Zohar. So in the text of these of the Zohar, so we mentioned the three spheres, that the level of Ata corresponds to Chesed, Havaya Yudke Vavke is Tiferes, and then Elokeinu represents the attribute of Gevura. So if we go back to the Zohar, we're going to find something quite interesting. And I put these words in squared or underlined. So if you look in the word Ata, you have the word Raza, right? The word's the secret of the Yamin, secret of the right side. That word appears once. So Ata is the Raza de Yamina, the secret of the right side. When we talk about Havaya Yudke Vavke, which is Tiferes, it says Raza de Emtsa, Raza de Mehem Nusa. It uses the word Raza, the secret, twice, the secret of the middle column. But when it comes to Elokeinu, so when it comes to Elokeinu, it says Sitra de Smala. It does not use the word Raza at all. Instead, it says Sitra de Smala, the left-hand side. So what is the significance of this? So let's go back to Rebbe Leivik's writings and see. Ba'ata uvavaya nakat teves raza. But when it comes to the Zohar's explanation of the word Ata, which is the spirit of Chesed, it uses the word Raza, the secret. When it talks about Havaya, it uses the word Raza, the secret, B'chol Echad. Raza de Yemina, which is Chesed. Raza de Emtsa, the secret of the middle, which is Tiferes. V'kan be'Elokeinu loy nakat Raza. But when it comes to Elokeinu, which is the spirit of Gevura, it does not use the word Raza, does not use the word secret. Rak Sitra, it says simply the left side. Furthermore, another diuk, ubahavaya nakat Raza based on. When the Zohar explains the word Havaya, which is the spirit of Tiferes, it uses the word Raza, Raza de Emtsa Isa, Raza de Mehem Nusa. So, what is the significance of that? Yesh levar, we could explain al derech kamoy b'yom rishon shenivra boy ha'or chesed ksiv ki toiv. The pasuk says kisheishes yamim asa Hashem es hashamayim ves haaretz. Hashem made the world in 6 days. But Chassidus explains it does not say b'sheishes Hashem made the world in 6 days. It says kisheishes yamim asa Hashem. The sheishes yamim, the 6 days, refers to the 6 supernal sephiros. The 6 sephiros, chesed, gevura, tiferes, netzach, hoid, and Yesoid. So the 6 spheres are the creative energies of creation. and every single day there is a different aspect of creation which is manifest. So on the first day of creation, which is the creation of light, light is associated with the attributes of chesed. With the second day of creation, which is about division, separation of the waters from above to below, separation is associated with the sphera of gevura. Then we have the third sphera. The third sphera is associated with, the third day of creation is associated with the sphera of tiferes. So if we have a look in creation, just to run through it very quickly, the first day was the creation of light. That is chesed. And it says, Vayar Elokim es ha'or ki toiv. In the box you'll see, Hashem saw the light, it was toiv, it was good. It says the word toiv once. On the second day of creation, where Hashem made the separation of above and below, the waters of above and the waters of below, which is gevura, separation, it does not use the word toiv at all. Because of course separation is not toiv, separation cannot be good. But on the third day, which is about the separation of the waters and the earth, and that the earth should give forth its vegetation, and it should have land with flowers and trees and grass, it says that Hashem said that the water should all gather in one place. Vayar Elokim ki toiv. Hashem saw it was good. And again, after the trees and plants grow, each one in its species, it says, Vayar Elokim ki toiv. Hashem saw it was good. So on the first day of creation, it says ki toiv once. The second day of creation, which is Gevurah, it does not say ki toiv at all. And on the third day of creation, it says ki toiv twice. So says the Rebbe's father that these words in the Bracha, as explained by the Zohar, parallel the 3 days of creation, Chesed, Gevurah, and Tiferes. So on the first day of creation, which is Chesed, it says the word toiv one time, and therefore the Zohar, when explaining the word Ata, which is Chesed, says Raza one time. Then it continues on, Uvayoim Sheni, the second day of creation, Shalaneged Gevurah, which corresponds to the sphera of Gevurah, like Siv Kitoiv, it does not say Kitoiv at all. V'hine Raza, why is that? Because V'hine Raza Shu Soid Vehelem, we know that this we'll see in a moment. The second day of creation does not say Toiv, and therefore the Zohar, when it talks about Elokeinu, which is the attribute of Gevurah, does not use the word Raza. Now, why are we drawing a parallel between Raza and Toiv? The Torah says Ki Toiv once on the first day, so the Zohar says Chesed Raza once. What's the connection? So he explains as follows: being a Raza Shu Soid Vehelem. The idea of a Raza secrets are things which are hidden. It's a Soid, it's a secret, it's concealed. Who kamoy bechinas Toiv, nonetheless, it is like the level of Toiv. Ki Toiv hu inyan geniza vehelem. Because the level of Toiv also represents the idea of concealment. Kamaimer apostle vayar lekimas ha'or ki Toiv lignois. It says in the Mefarshim, the Medrash says on Parshas Bereshis that Hashem saw the light of the first day that it was good, ki Toiv. What was Toiv? Ki Toiv lignois. It was good to hide. Hashem hid that brilliant light that shone on the first day of creation that Adam could see from one end of the world to the other, and he hid it away for the tzaddikim, la'asilav, the tzaddikim in the future. So when it says he saw ki toiv, he saw it was good. What? Good to hide away. So we see raza, which is hiddenness, and toiv are compatible and reflect the same idea. Hashem saw the light that it was good to hide it itself. Let's jump down to the next line. We'll skip the brackets. The Zohar says, what is good, toiv? That is when all of the light is contained within it, and it does not spread out or emanate to come down below. So when it spreads out to come down below, that is revelation. That is not toiv. Toiv is when all of the lights are contained within their source, and therefore that is the idea of hiddenness. Makam Sham and the Midrash Melech explains over there. Hare. Shetoiv hu besoid vehelem she'enim mispashet. Im kein toiv hu k'may raza. Therefore, we see from this Zohar and from this Medrash that the word toiv is connected to the idea of being hidden away, that it's not expanded, it's not revealed. And therefore, toiv and raz are associated. Lachein, ba'ata shu chesed kohen, and therefore, when the Zohar explains the level of ata, which is the kohen, which is the attribute of chesed, So the Zohar, which is referring to the level of, I'll bring back up the next page. We're going to jump over the page now. When the Zohar is explaining the spirit of Yemina, the right side, just like the first day when the energy of Chesed was manifest, Shenivra Boy Ha'or, light, which is Chesed, Naktu Raza Yemina, it uses the word the secret of the right, because just like it says the word Toiv on the first day of creation. Uba Havaya Tiferes. Then we come to Havaya when the Zohar explains in the Bracha Baruch Ata Havaya Yudke Vavke, that corresponds to Tiferes. Kumoy Yom Shlishi, which Tiferes is the third of the spirits, which corresponds to the third day of creation. Shaloneged spirits at Tiferes. Naktu base Pamim Raza, it uses the word Raza twice. Raza de Emtsa Isa, the Tiferes is the secret of the middle. Raza de Memnusa, the secret of Emunah. Just like on the third day of creation, which is about Tiferes, synthesis and harmony, it says the word ki toiv, toiv 2 times. When it comes to Elokeinu, which corresponds to the sphere of Gevura, we'll skip the brackets, which corresponds to the second day of creation, which was about separation, which is Gevura. Therefore, it does not use the word Raza at all. Just as on the second day of creation, it does not use the word ki toiv, it does not say the word toiv at all. So that's the explanation of these 3 terms of Ata, which is the Chesed, Havaya, Tiferes, Gevura is Elokeinu. Why the Zohar is specific to use the word Raza one time when explaining Chesed, because it says one time ki toiv on the first day of creation. When it explains Havaya, which is Tiferes, it says Raza 2 times, because the third day of creation, it says Ki Toiv twice. And then we have the level of Gevura, which it does not use the word Raza at all, it just says simply the side, the left side, that is corresponding to the second day of creation, which was Gevura, and therefore it does not mention the terms at all. We're going to conclude over here, and Rebbe Levi does continue on to explain some of the details of why there's certain repetitivity when explaining the level of Chesed, but perhaps we'll leave that to another time. So just quickly to summarize, we saw that the Yud, which is the Makayra, the source of everything, the sphere of Chachma, the Zohar uses 3 terms. That is La'arka, to pour out, La'amshacha, to draw down, Ula Anhara, to illuminate. They correspond to the 3 dimensions within Chachma, the Yud, Vav, and Dalet, the Nakuda, the dot, the Kav, the line, and the Shetach, the expansiveness, which parallels the 3 intellectual spheres. Chachma is that Yud, that nucleus, that flash of an idea. Shetach, the Dalet, is Bina, which is the expansion and understanding, the illumination of the idea. And then Das is where we draw it down into our personal experience. And those are the 3 terms. La'arka, which is the Nakuda, the La'amshacha, to draw it down, that is the Kav. And then we have La'anhara, to illuminate, when we understand it in Bina. And then we explained that the 3 levels, the bracha then comes down. Ata is Chesed, Havaya is Tiferes, and then we have Elokeinu Gevura. And once we have all of those 3, then it automatically will filter down to Elokeinu Melech. Ha'olam, Melech is the spirit of Malchus, of course, and from Malchus it comes down Ha'olam into the low worlds. So that is something which we can have in mind every time we say a bracha, that we are bringing godliness into the world, and it gives us a glimpse into the way Rebbe Levi would study the Zohar, being medayik on every word. That if the Zohar uses 3 words to describe Chachma, La'arka, La'amshacha, La'anhara, it is because they are necessary, because each word brings out a different dimension within Chachma. And so too, if the Zohar says Raza 1 time when explaining Chesed, Raza 2 times when explaining Tiferes, and does not use that word at all when explaining Gevura, that is something which we can medayik in